Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good whatever time of day it is, wherever you are right now. Thank you for tuning in to the Conversations with Dr. Don show. The show is produced and broadcast from the Portland, Oregon area. For your first-time viewers, Conversations with Dr. Don is an ongoing series of one-hour standalone talk shows where I interview interesting people like most of you out there about who they are as unique, one-of-a-kind individuals and about whatever it is we have decided to talk about. And tonight we'll be talking about what's important on November 26, 2018. What's important on November 26, 2018? And my guests this evening are guests from the past. Lloyd Morbett, my dear friend.
Brother Baham.
How you doing? And Catherine Chudy.
Mm-hmm.
How are you?
I'm good.
How are you feeling right now?
Good.
Good?
Mm-hmm.
How is he feeling? He doesn't speak very well.
Yeah, how am I feeling? Please tell him, dear.
With your fingers.
Please.
You guys. As you know, the show goes in two major parts. The first part is the personal bio stuff where I talk to my guests about who they are in terms of where they were born and all that kind of stuff and education. So the viewers can have an idea where you're coming from and why you're having the views that you're having, okay? So then the second half of the show, and knowing you guys, you talk so much, we won't have very much going in the second half of the show. We'll have a lot. So let's get started.
Let's make the first part small.
Okay.
And the second part big, and they can watch previous shows that we've been on, and they'll get all that. So we don't even need to get into that.
Well, you forget I have so many new viewers.
But that's a way to get them to go into the past and see all the wonderful stuff that you have done.
This
man has done many
This
a
is
show.
how the show is going to go hereafter. You can see that now. It's who's in charge here.
Here we go.
Okay.
Damn, pulling rank.
I was calm and peaceful until you showed up, and then we got fighting again, and I love it.
No, we never fight. Dr. Don,
People who love
you
each
have to
other
be
have
kind to even unkind people.
I give up. I quit. Okay, ready? I'm not going to ask you the same questions all over again, but some of them anyhow.
Okay.
If I would ask, shall we start with Kathy?
Let's start with Kathy.
Kathy.
No, seriously.
Yes. If I would ask your best friend, Kathy, who is Kathy? What would your best friend say? Kathy is. Be your best friend right now.
She's a daughter.
She, first person.
I'm a daughter. I'm a partner. I'm a sister. I'm a friend. I'm a therapist. I'm an activist.
Yes, yeah. I'm not supposed to ask you when. Where were you born?
Oh, Buffalo, New York.
Why?
Why?
Yeah.
Why was I?
Everyone asks me the same question back all the time. Why?
I chose wonderful parents in a small town in Western New York, and a family that already had one daughter, followed by twins. I'm a twin.
Uh-huh.
And then two more came after, 5 daughters.
What's your twin's name?
Christine.
Uh-huh. And how old is she? Never mind.
There you go. Trick
That is
question.
slick. That is
I'm
slick.
20 minutes younger than her.
Okay, I was getting to that. And anything significant about your national or racial or cultural heritage worth mentioning or not?
Well, my mom is German and my dad's Polish. And so they had lots of interesting conversations about their ethnic origins, both from immigrant families and originally, as we all are. And my mom was from a small rural community and my dad was from a city. So they brought lots of interesting dynamics.
Yay. Religious preference, did you have one as a little person?
Well,
and do you have one now?
I was raised Catholic.
Oh, forgive
Had
you.
12 years of Catholic Well, I had
You're
12
forgiven. This is so good.
12 years of Catholic education, a value of my parents, and I think it was pretty solid. I had Salvatorian priests as a high school student who taught me critical thinking.
Can you turn that off?
No,
Oh,
I can't.
okay, that's okay. We'll manage.
I don't think.
Yeah, just turn it off at the top.
Try.
So,
There you go.
and
And then
what's your religious preference nowadays?
non-practicing Catholic is what they say. I mean, but I have spiritual side of me.
I was going to ask you, what do you mean by spiritual? But I think I better save that for Lloyd.
Yes. No, I don't go to Sunday Mass. I don't. But I do believe in that out there in the universe somehow there's
Something more.
Something more.
Yeah,
Yes.
that's what I believe. There's something more.
absolutely.
I'm not sure what it is, or if even there is such a thing, but
Right.
I'm a skeptic. And how about your formal education? Besides that,
12 years of 4 years of 4 years of college and 4 years of graduate school.
Ah. And what was your major?
Summa cum laude.
Well, my 4 years of college were speech therapy,
Yeah.
and then 4 years of interpersonal communication
Yeah.
as a graduate student.
I got to be careful how I speak to you.
No, I didn't finish, so I wore out and came west.
So, you still work?
Yes, I'm still a therapist. I'm not full-time, on call with adolescents, suicidal adolescents.
You pick up a specialty that's pretty interesting, huh? You enjoy that?
I do.
I can tell. I can tell by the look in your eyes. And you have a partner, boyfriend, girlfriend?
I'm her interpersonal communication.
And you have children?
I have children through Lloyd and children through a former marriage.
Everywhere she has
And children everywhere, yeah. Nieces and nephews and
It's more than that. You have all those children that
Yes, I
you
do.
helped in your
that's true.
employment.
Yes. Do the children like you? Okay. You didn't have hesitation there.
No,
Your
they do.
self-esteem is
Well,
right there. Your
I
per-
used to have children. That's how wonderful she is.
She has a big child right now in you.
That's been a major work over
in progress.
an opus, kind of like the Sistine Chapel.
Political persuasion.
Progressive.
Okay. And memberships in political, social, or civic organizations. Any come to mind
Ooh.
that maybe one or two mention? Or,
Oh, well, I work with a task force with the Sierra Club, and I'm also on the board of the Oregon Conservancy Foundation. So, environmental.
Yes, yes. And persons from the past or alive today that you particularly admire or look up to. Any names come to mind? Like me, Lloyd.
We have a new hero. Oh,
I think I've talked about it before, Antigone. And also Bob Dylan, Joan Baez, Billie Holiday.
Yeah. Okay,
Great
we can
singers.
Go on and go on.
Yeah.
Okay. How about you? Are you ready to be grilled?
I want to start with the last one.
Okay.
I just recently had the privilege, and I mean privilege, of watching a documentary about a wonderful woman by the name of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. And the documentary is called RBG.
Yes, and I've seen it twice.
And up until this time, have not had a lot of room for new people in my pantheon of heroes and heroines, but she's right up there, let me tell you. That's a wonderful documentary, and she is something that I think is worth emulating, if at all. So I stay up later at night. I let her do the cooking. Oh, no, wait a minute. Her husband did the cooking. I'm teasing. So anyway.
So, shall we start from the top a little bit? When and where were you born?
I was born in Columbus, Ohio.
Columbus, Ohio. Anything significant?
And I didn't choose my parents. I have no memory of it. I would have reconsidered it, but anyway.
Anything significant about your racial or cultural heritage?
Significance about my racial or cultural heritage.
Oh, you
My father said that
bread.
my family was made up of horse thieves.
That's enough of that.
There it is.
I didn't know that.
How about a religious preference for you? Did you ever have one?
A religious preference. My religion is humanity. It's yeah.
How long have you had that religion?
Ever since I started to discover some of it.
When did you first start discovering?
Ever since I was born. It's been one human after another.
I'm out of here. I love it. I love it. I love you, man. Yeah. Okay, and you have a political persuasion other than your mates?
No, we have no political differences that I can tell anyway. Yeah.
I got a puzzle to follow.
But we don't agree on Bob Dylan.
That's true.
How can that be? How can that be?
Well, I like Bob Dylan, but not to the degree that she likes Bob Dylan.
How about Van Morrison?
Van Morrison's all
The
right.
Doors?
She took me to this concert. Well, actually, the thing that ruined our relationship from the very beginning is she took me to a Bob Dylan movie, and I just thought he was arrogant.
Well,
Really.
yes,
It was a documentary about
Right.
him, and oof, it just hit me all wrong. And then she took me to a concert, and it's like, this guy has discovered volume. And I mean, the volume was, I had to leave. My ears were hurting so much.
Yeah,
Van
yeah.
Morrison was wonderful. I mean, it didn't blow you out of the auditorium. But I was amazed at how many people stayed. I think there's a lot of people now that are making the hearing aid industry quite rich. But anyway, that's just me.
So, and your formal education?
My formal education's life, basically. I have, a year of college, and I do a lot of reading.
And what did you do to put bread on the table when you were working? I know you're too damned old to work. Pardon me.
What did I do to put bread on the table? Dumpster dived. I did a lot of dumpster diving in my early
You
days.
sold candles. You made
I
candles.
made candles.
You
That's
sold
right. I've done a lot of
newspapers.
stuff. I've sold newspapers. That's true. Yeah.
And do you earn any money nowadays?
I have turned into
Dumpster
an
diving.
Agent Orange veteran.
Yes.
And so I am now have a relationship, which I really don't want, with the military and the Veterans Administration.
Me
And
too.
they compensate me for the damage that I experienced, which I had totally put out of my mind. And when I became an activist, I was an anti-war activist at the very beginning. And
Anti-war being Vietnam?
Vietnam. And then I discovered that all these years later, I was a victim and didn't realize it. And I think there's probably a lot of people who had similar experiences, I think. I don't, it's not like I got tested for Agent Orange.
Are we heading toward another Vietnam with this present administration?
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that because I was just reading on my iPhone news, Apple News or whatever, that there's been a confrontation between Ukraine and Russia, that there's been several ships that have been fired on, and this has to do with them taking the Crimea, I think. And, you know, it's escalating, and unfortunately, we've got some very poor leadership in this country that may fall susceptible to all this, and who knows where it goes. I don't know.
But we also have Afghanistan and Iraq.
Yeah, that's right.
And
We got
all the
yeah.
Libya and all the.
So a lot of
We've been at
potential
war.
Vietnams.
There's lots of little
They're not potential.
fires
They've
that
been in-
could flare up into massive wildfires. Speaking of
Quagmires.
Quagmires.
is
Oh
the
yes,
word.
quagmires. Well, I don't know.
They've been quagmires.
Yes,
We're not over them.
Yeah.
I certainly hope that's not where we go.
And I'm not going to ask you about your political persuasion because I don't want you two to get into a fight.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
The difference between sympathy and empathy, I asked you this last time.
you asked that of me? Empathy and sympathy?
Did I miss asking you that last time?
I don't know.
think
I
I
don't remember
remember.
ever being asked that question. Was that?
Yeah.
What was the
came up.
answer I gave?
Yeah, I don't.
See, she doesn't remember, so it probably wasn't significant.
God.
What's the difference? We should have both. How about that?
Yes. I like one you can see more than the other.
Yeah, that's right. And
Sympathy.
sympathy is kind of like it could be, there really could not be an honest emotion there.
But if it's empathy, I can see it.
Yes,
It's in your
that's very
eyes.
good. That's
It's
very
the
good.
way you hold your head.
That's what I like about it. He asks questions that he can answer. It's really good.
That's why I've got you here, because there's so many you come up with that I can't find answers for.
Oh, yeah.
Memberships in political, social, or civic organizations, they come to mind. And there's so many, Lloyd.
Yeah. Humanity
name
again.
just 10 of them.
I am a member of Humanity. It's been a rough kind of course, but it's been interesting.
Do you compare your membership in the human race with memberships in
Well,
the animal species?
not all humans have been willing to take me into the membership, but I feel like I'm still a part of it.
And you will forever, forever. Look, persons from the past that you particularly liked or admired.
Oh my gosh.
Name me one or two or three people, whatever.
Gandhi has always played a big role in my life.
Yes.
You know.
Who else?
Oh my gosh. Well, there's Martin Luther King, Malcolm X. I liked Malcolm X a lot.
Why?
I thought he was quite articulate, and I greatly admired the fact that in the worst of conditions, imprisonment, he chose to better
grew.
himself and expand his consciousness. He just didn't sit and let the white oppressors, overroll his life. I admire the man greatly.
Who's our
And
next?
I also like the fact that he also was constantly evolving. It wasn't like he was caught in any frame of reference. He went to, what was it, Mecca for the pilgrimage, and came back with a whole altered view of how to relate to white people, because he saw all people of colors come together at Mecca. And all that, again, I have a picture of him on the wall. I like him a lot. Yes.
Which reminds me, we just saw the other day the Green Book. Have you heard about that movie?
No.
Viggo Mortensen. It just came out.
Oh, no.
Outstanding movie.
Oh, really? Is this the one where he chauffeurs?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
You've seen the previews.
I've seen previews.
It is
yeah.
Chauffeurs
really
too.
delightful.
He chauffeurs a black man, and I'm not exactly
black
a musician.
pianist,
A
musician.
musician. That's right.
A
Yeah.
real life human
Right.
being.
And I know nothing about this story, so please, I'm not
Yes.
going to give away the ending.
I promise you will be charmed. Yeah.
The
Okay.
green. Okay.
It's,
Okay.
and the name of it again? The Green.
The Green Book.
The Green Book. Okay. Good. We have to remember. Yeah.
And, okay. So let's take a break. when we come back, we'll get into the meat of this stuff.
Good. That's. I think that's always the important part of it.
Okay, we're back. Thanks for staying tuned. For you viewers who missed the opening of the show, Conversations with Dr. Don is an ongoing series of one-hour standalone talk shows where I interview interesting people, like most of you out there, about who they are as unique, one-of-a-kind individuals, and about whatever it is we've decided to talk about tonight. And tonight we're talking about what's important on November 26, 2018, and my guests are Lord Morbett and Kathy Chudy. Are you still feeling okay?
Yes.
How about you?
Yeah, I'm feeling really well. It's always good to be with you, Dr. Don. And I don't have indigestion, so.
I don't know where this comes from. Okay, we got a bunch of stuff to show in the graphics when it's appropriate, and actually 4 different panels. We'll bring them up appropriately. I understand the first thing we're going to talk about is the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change Special Report on Global Warming. Global warming. You want to talk about that?
I have been thinking about how to preface this.
Sure.
And when you ask the question, what's important, on November 26, 2018, I think a very brief answer to that is the last 2 months. And the reason why I say that is because I immediately go to the first topic that you raised, which is on October the 8th, 2018, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change issued a special report on global warming of 1.5 degrees centigrade. Now, the 1.5 degrees centigrade is important because for a long time there's been discussion about how much climate change or how much temperature increase we can take on the planet. And for a long time it was like 2 degrees centigrade. We could add 2 degrees centigrade, but that's not really where it's coming. We're already added 1, and we're already starting to see hugely significant events. Now, when the thing comes up on the screen, I wanted to talk to your viewership who might not be convinced that global warming or climate change is really happening. Mm-hmm. And there is such substantive information, and you're looking at it right now, folks, and please write down the links so that you can go get these reports. You can have all this. You don't even have to pay for it. It's free. You can download it, PDF files at those two.
Or you can pause the show and write it down.
Yes, pause the show and write it down. The significance of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change report is that they are heavily emphasizing the need for us to stay at 1 point, no more than 1.5 degrees. And they are heavily emphasizing the fact that we need to make substantive changes, radical changes in the way that we live, in the way that we conduct business, in the way that we our relationship with fossil fuels, which has to end. I mean, we have to end it, and we have to do it in a short space of time. So I invite people, again, go to get a copy of that report. I'm not going to go into it. You can download what you want from it. They give you chapter by chapter. You can get an overview, summary, the whole 9 yards. The second thing of significance in the last 2 months, of course, is what started on November the 8th, which is the fire in California called the Camp Fire. There were two of them, the Camp Fire and the Woolsey Fire in Malibu, two different places. One down south in California, one up north in California. Turns that the fire up north in California is now the deadliest fire in California's history. Deadliest. Since November the 8th, that fire destroyed almost 14,000 homes, 514 businesses, 4,265 other buildings. It covered 153,000 acres, equal almost in size to the city of Chicago. It's the deadliest fire again in California history. 85 people now have been discovered to be dead. And even today, there are still 249 people missing. That's the most recent news today. 249 people missing. I've never heard of a wildfire. It hit the city of Paradise, California, a city of 26,000 people, and it just decimated. It's gone. People were talking about 100-foot tall walls of fire moving towards them that they were trying to escape from, and coming so quickly that they really had no time to evacuate, and that's the reason why you have the statistics that we're sharing. At the same time, this is going on in Woolsey, which is a fire that's still going on. It's 98% contained. There's 1,452 structures destroyed. There's 333 structures damaged. There's 96,949 acres that have been burned.
So there's evidence of climate change.
It's overwhelming. It's unlike the president, who has the means to travel to these places to visit, and who seems to think that raking underneath trees was the reason why this fire. We did not rake underneath the trees. These poor people didn't do it, and therefore the whole forest practices are going to have to change.
Why don't you use his name and say that the president?
I have a hard time using that man's name. I don't really particularly like him very much. I hate to admit I've established a bias, and my bias is the sooner we get rid of him, the better. I mean, that's how I feel about it. So anyway,
one of the things, though, that's important is that we have to think of it as not simply climate change. And a lot of people say climate change, it changes all the time. Or they say global warming, well, we get blizzards in the winter, so they dismiss that this is a problem. So we really have to think about it. And with these fires, it's clear catastrophic climate change is what we're up against.
Well, California is in a drought, and a most unusual drought. And amazingly enough, I also have discovered that Oregon's been in a drought. 80% of Oregon has been in a drought up until just recently. Mm-hmm. And so the message that I ought to be sending to people out there is we're looking at California, it's getting closer all the time. And of course that leads to the most recent report. Again, in the last 2 months, there's another report that's come out. On November 23rd, an entity called the U.S. Global Change Research Program has issued a report called the Fourth National Climate Assessment. This is volume 2. The first volume was issued in, and this again is how you can get to that report. There's the link to it. It's free. You can download it by chapters. You can get the summary, the whole 9 yards. Get it. If you have any doubt in your mind that we're not facing a calamitous time, I invite you to do this. And the interesting thing about this report, I actually heard something on the radio about this. They were interviewing one of the main researchers in this report. There were 13 agencies of the federal government that were involved in it. Say that this one's not about polar bears. It's about us. And it's not about us from the standpoint of being the cause of this, because that's what I was going to say. The first volume of the report in November of 2017 already establishes that. It establishes that climate change is human-driven, period. That's the only explanation that we can come up with. What this report comes up with is the economic damage that's already been done. I mean, we're not talking about these future, modelings of where we might be going. It's talking about what's already happened
And
to
it's
it.
progressing.
And it's talking about the progression and what it is that we can expect from this. And basically, there's nobody in the United States of America that's not going to be impacted by one way or another, either directly or indirectly. And by that, you can say, a classic example is that when the agricultural operations are impacted or destroyed, that's food that doesn't go on the table. That can be people that live maybe a distance from where the problem is. We're all going to be impacted by this, and we need to address it now. So that was kind of like the reason that I thought it was important to at least emphasize the last 2 months, because the last 2 months is in our face. It really is in our face.
What's interesting about the one that was released on Friday is that it was deliberately released on the 23rd, which was the Black Friday economic thing across the country where everyone's out shopping, or many people are out shopping.
Consuming is what it's
consuming
called.
and not paying attention. And the current administration doesn't want people to know that this is happening.
I always thought that it was quite one of the most significant things of 9/11 was George W. Bush trying to convince people to go back out and shop as a way
Right.
to deal with this trauma that we had witnessed in New York City. And here, again, with a president whose name I won't mention, but who's even worse than George. In fact, every Republican president has made the ones before them look good. This president now is basically doing the same thing, except he's using it as a way to commit subterfuge. He wants you not to see the evidence of what it is that
Because
we
you
are.
might interfere with his
His
accumulation of more
agenda.
wealth.
Hey, they're going to a climate change conference in December, which is taking place in Poland, and the Trump administration is bringing a presentation on fossil fuels. That's what they want to talk about. No kidding.
Yes,
And
I mean,
in the meantime, the U.S. Geological Survey on Friday, same day that this report came out, released a report on drilling oil and gas on federal lands, on public lands.
it
which-
never stops.
Right, which this administration has been pushing. And in the meantime, they've rolled back any standards for methane that gets released by those operations. So they really want our understanding of what drives carbon dioxide pollution to be ignored or shoved under the table while they do their profits.
and
Fossil
this is
fuel.
where we make
Profits.
that great
Profits.
panel transition. Because in this panel, we have provided your viewership sources of scientific evidence, well researched
Yes.
and demonstrated. And
That's
now,
fake news. What are you talking about? That's
Well,
fake news.
no. I don't even want to go into fake news because I don't think that we can deal with the fake news that's in charge right now. I think
Yes.
what we got to do is get to the second panel that we're transcending into, which is how we right now, here in Portland, in the Northwest, can deal with some very significant problems, carbon contributors. And my protege here is actually Kathy and I, we work with the Oregon Conservancy Foundation. And Kathy has gone on behalf of the Conservancy Foundation into the community where she lives.
Did you start that organization?
Yeah, that organization was started by us back in 1992, I think it was. We've been around for a while. And we came out of a settlement with the utilities over illegally charging ratepayers for nuclear power plants. That's basically how this foundation was founded. But we've gone on to take on more issues than nuclear power, though I am still a anti-nuclear activist, and I still believe that the biggest mistake that we can make is to use nuclear power to confront the other big mistake that we're confronting, which is climate change.
Wasn't nuclear power very useful and as a transition?
No, nuclear power is like one poisonous energy resource being proposed to do away with another poisonous energy resource. We need to get to the solution, which is renewable energy. And I'm not going to go into that in depth because I again think that what we need to talk about here is what Kathy has been working on.
So one might say, well, what am I going to do? The federal government is pushing fossil fuel extraction. It's pushing fossil fuel companies to do more and more profits at our expense. There's nothing I can do. The answer to that is that there's a lot we can do at the state level and at the local level, but we have to be vigilant and we have to know what's coming at us. And there's a lot coming at us. As an example, I'm from Vancouver, and we, within the last 5 years, stopped, over the course of 5 years, the big proposed oil terminal that was going to be sited at the Port of Vancouver. And there have been numerous coal export terminals that we have challenged and stopped. Right now, there's a methanol refinery that's been proposed at Kalama, which is just 30 miles north of Vancouver, or 30 miles north of the Columbia River. And that is it's called, the company that's proposing it is Northwest Innovative Works, which is, interestingly enough, a fossil fuel company owned by the Chinese government. And they are wanting to bring by pipeline fracked gas to Kalama and to turn it into methanol, which then would be shipped to China, supposedly for plastics. But the background is that it would most likely be used for fuel, to fuel Chinese autos. And we know that there's millions of automobiles in China.
Kalama Methanol Refinery.
Correct.
Yeah.
It's been controversial because it would affect the health of local residents. It has impacts on our climate. Fracked gas has to come by pipeline. The current pipelines that come up the I-5 corridor are not sufficient, so they would have to build another pipeline.
Environmentally
Pipeline
hazardous.
leakage.
Now, I noticed you've talked about the Columbia River Keeper and the Sierra
Yes.
Club. Why do you
Yes.
mention
We should
those?
bring that all up.
So how these proposals happen is that they have to do an environmental assessment, and then the permitting agencies
Can you bring
permit.
that panel up?
Yeah. Columbia River Keeper is one of the local organizations that is vigilant about these kinds of proposals. And
Yeah, what we have brought
Sierra
is
Club.
Yeah.
linked information.
Yes.
Links
Right.
to where you can get more information on this. I don't know
Right.
what's happening back there in
but
the black box.
it's okay, but I can make a little bit more explanation while they bring it up.
Sure.
So the original environmental impact statement did not address the impacts that would occur by bringing it just said, okay, right here at the site, what are the impacts, but it didn't look at what would be
Beyond.
bringing it up by pipeline or shipping it over, and then what would happen with emissions, both in the life cycle instead of just right at the site. And so Columbia Riverkeeper, the Sierra Club, and Columbia Riverkeeper and the Sierra Club and the Center for Biological Diversity challenged that environmental impact review in court and won the they needed to get a supplement, the company had to get a supplemental environmental impact statement.
Let me add something here so people understand what these three, bring them back up again, what these three links are. The Kalama methanol refinery link is actually the company link. This will take you to the SEPA report, what they call the Supplemental Environmental Impact Statement.
That just came out.
It's one of the choices that you get. You go to the library and you can download a whole bunch of information there. Columbia Riverkeeper and the Sierra Club are both lead opponents to this proposal.
Yes.
And they too have a wide variety of information, including comments that they're submitting that you can join with when you go to these links. So that's one of the reasons why I wanted to pause this here, is so you can understand the significance of each of those offerings, so to speak, that on the menu.
So Cowlitz County and the Port of Kalama and the Department of Ecology in the state of Washington are the ones who will permit this methanol refinery. And interestingly enough, this supplemental review is very deficient. It grossly underestimates the climate risks. It cherry-picked studies, used outdated information, and made highly speculative assumptions that said, oh, this actually could help climate change rather than harm anybody. So there's a public hearing that's happening on December 13th, and there's a public comment period from now through December 28th, and it's up to us as vigilant citizens to go to the hearing or submit comments to say this supplemental review is not acceptable, that it definitely underestimates the risks, and that we need to convince the permitting agencies that this refinery is harmful.
Now, we need to kind of be clear here also.
Right.
Clean Air Kalama is yet another organization. It's the local organization that's made up of the people in the community of Kalama that are opposing this. And they also have a website that's filled with information. So this is a good place to go. The public hearing on December the 13th has to do with that methanol facility.
And the supplemental review.
But the hearing below that is the next thing we're going to discuss. It also is a different issue. So we'll let that one go away for the time being, but we'll bring it back because we want to talk about it. That's when we'll be talking about Jordan Cove.
Right. So again, if we're going to keep the state of Washington from having the largest fracked gas to methanol refinery in the world, that's what would be located at Kalama. We have to go to the hearing, we have to submit public comments, we have to oppose this refinery.
Activism.
Yes, yes. And we've done it before. There were great odds against us at the for the oil terminal, great odds for all the export terminals, coal export terminals, and we were able to prevail. But it was because of individual citizens going and either submitting comments or taking their own personal story and saying, here's why this matters, here's where I live, this is what's going to happen to my children or my grandchildren if our air and water and the Columbia River gets affected by these fossil fuel proposals.
Science shows what we're talking about and the dangers involved with all of this using fossil fuels.
Right.
And we're still doing that. We are doing it, the Americans or whatever. Why don't we do something different? Is it wealth management we need someplace global?
Well, that's a fairly complex subject.
You know, it really begins with each one of us individually.
Okay.
I mean, we make choices every day in our life that involve fossil fuels. When we get on airplanes, for instance, and travel, we're adding into the atmosphere. When we buy the products that we buy, if we're buying agricultural products that come from long distances, we're buying fossil fuels again because it has to be transported to us. All these things ultimately, I think, have to happen together. Not only do we make societal changes about what kind of manufacturing operations we allow to operate in our midst and how we distribute the resources that we find in our own geography, those are significant questions. But it also is how we live individually. You know, what kind of community we're going to build in the face of what really is a coming catastrophe, and it's happening to us now.
It sounds like our priorities as citizens are somehow misplaced or confused.
I'd say there's some of that, that's for sure, yes. In fact, large part of that.
So, what are we going to do about it?
Well, we need to talk about Jordan Cove because, again, this is another opportunity for people to speak up.
Right. So Coos Bay has been the site of a proposal that has twice by the Federal Energy Regulatory Council or Commission,
FERC.
Twice they have said that it's
Energy
not in the
Regulatory.
not in the public interest to put a liquefied natural gas export terminal at Coos Bay. However, the company, which is out of Canada, not even part of Oregon or our region or our country, wants to bring that. They want their profits, and so they're trying again to get this terminal permitted, and it would involve the Pacific Connector pipeline, which is 229 miles of pipeline that goes through Klamath Falls and up into Coos Bay. It would harm 500 waterways. It would take
indigenous
people. It would take land from by eminent domain in order to do it. And again, pipelines leak, and so there'd be all the leakage and all the air pollution and all the water pollution that would be involved.
So we need to come to that
people,
hearing
right.
that was up in the panel again.
Right. So
We can bring that back up if the there it is.
There we go. And
That
so-
public hearing on
yeah.
December the
there's
13th.
you have a little bit of time on this one. January 15th, 5:30 to 8:30 p.m. The Department of State Lands in Salem is it's a removal fill permit, and sometimes the permits are fairly technical, but unless people show up and say, we don't want you to permit this, and give them good reasons, they're going to just go ahead, and this is our way of stopping this. The federal administration right now wants this to happen from a federal standpoint, but from a regional and a state standpoint, this would be the largest single pollution source for Oregon if it gets built.
Well, considering what's important on this date, what we've been talking about so far is certainly that important
Yes.
and worthy of the kind of attention we've been putting out.
The nice thing about this hearing that's coming up on in January is that this is an opportunity for the people in Northern Oregon
Yes.
to help support the people in Southern
Southern
Oregon
Oregon.
that are putting themselves on the line in opposition to this.
Because
So
that's the pipeline runs
the
through
the
there.
pipeline runs all the
area.
way through there.
All right, in the interest of covering most of the stuff that we have in mind, is we have 3 books that you want to mention something about.
You know, I always attempt to do show and tell when I joined Dr. Don for this wonderful opportunity to talk to the viewership. And I brought 3 books, one of which I brought before, but first I will start with this one.
You got about 6 minutes to cover those 3 books, so space
That's
it out.
right. So bring up that panel that shows the books. Now the first book is The Big Heat, Earth on the Brink, by Jeffrey St. Clair and Joshua Frank. Now Jeffrey St. Clair is co-editor. And Joshua Frank is managing editor of a wonderful magazine called Counterpunch. Just put Counterpunch into Google and it'll take you there. I have not read this book yet, but I have great respect for these journalists. I've read much of what they've done. I highly recommend people take a look at it. I'm going to start reading it as soon as I get out of the studio. That's that one. The second book is one that I brought before, and the reason why I brought this again is, well, you see it in the title, though it's not all up there. The title is, the main part of the title is Learning to Die in the Anthropocene. And underneath it is what really kind of goes to the last 2 months. It's reflections on the end of a civilization. This man, I think, is a prophet in his own time. Okay. I think people ought to take a look at it. Anyway, I mention it again. The other book is one that kind of disturbs all your beliefs about what sapiens are and what our role is on the planet. And this has been a hard book for me to read, but I highly recommend it. It'll ruin your life like it's ruined mine. And it's called A Brief History of Humankind. It's by Yuval Noah Harari, and I think it's worth the read. I don't agree with all of it, but I agree with most of it. So anyway, there you have it. 3 books. We've covered the books.
Yeah,
Dr. Don.
You want to say a little more about any one of these? Because you've got a few minutes left.
Well, if I got a few minutes left, hell, I'll just bring up the book that I brought the last time, too. I like books. I think people should read them. This is a good one. You won't have a panel to look at. It's called Drawdown, the most comprehensive plan ever proposed to reverse global warming. It's edited by Paul Hawken. And again, we look for solutions, we look for answers. That's what this one's about. It's not the Bible of everything that needs to be done in our lives, but it provides you some opportunities to choose solutions rather than continue problems.
How new is this book?
This is new.
Bestseller.
I brought it to the last show, and I think it just came out at that time. Let's look it up here real quick. I'm almost certain this is 2008, but I think it would be 2018. 2017, it was done last year.
That's pretty
So
new.
there you have it, it's new. So, gol darn.
Now, what I want you to do is, you talked about so much stuff, and there's a summary involved that if you're talking to the viewers, look in that camera and talk to them about any thoughts about what we've done so far this evening, or any further thoughts about this subject.
You want me to go on this
Go.
one?
Okay. Yeah, both of you go.
Oh, I have something to say, actually. We think it doesn't touch our lives, but Lloyd's son is, Lloyd's son, Ty Aqua Morgan Marbet, is an environmental engineer, and he was part of a volunteer team that went to Paradise.
Of engineers.
And he walked through the barren landscape. He stood as the cadaver dogs and the people in hazmat suits went in, and right after that they came out with 2 dead bodies. And that's it. That is catastrophic climate change coming home for him, and can be catastrophic climate change coming home for us as well. It's around the corner, and we have to do something to keep people from having to experience more of these terrible losses.
Maybe we're in the corner. It's not around the corner. We're approaching the bend in it. Huh?
Right.
Yeah. So, okay, Lloyd,
Well,
what's your final word to the viewers?
I guess I want to give thanks to all of you out there who may share in this opportunity that we have to be together for the changes that you're going to bring. And I have lived my life believing in those changes that you're going to bring. I think you can do it. I am not necessarily an intelligent man of broad depth, though I do my best to try and understand what's going on. But I do know that together we can make great differences. I believe in that togetherness. And so I guess if there's anything that I want to say is I want to say thank you, because without our common effort to turn this around, it won't turn around.
Well, thank you again. And it's been beautiful. Thank you. Yeah. And I got to give you a couple of public service announcements to close with. The ACLU is my favorite, the American Civil Liberties Union. Without the ACLU, I don't know where our civil liberties would be. There's a contact for the ACLU. Join the ACLU. I've been a member for 50 years or so. The next one is about to learn about the Alliance for Democracy. Go to the national website at www.thealliancefordemocracy.org and the Portland, Oregon website at www.afd-pdx.org. And to learn how to end corporate personhood, that is so important. So much of our difficulties going on in our lives here as a result of that Supreme Court decision that says corporations are persons and money is speech. We've got to end corporate personhood. Yeah. So, it's time for us to say goodnight. Keep your pens and pencils handy. Thanks for watching. And remember, KFC, not Kentucky Fried Chicken, Dr. Don's KFC. Kind, friendly, and charitable. And thanks again for watching. I hope you enjoyed Lloyd and Kathy as much as I did. So we'll see you next time. Be kind, and be friendly, and be charitable to you too. I almost forgot that. Be kind, be friendly, and be charitable to you too. And you too in the control room.
Thanks for everybody in the black box.